Tonight, we return to the ruins of the lost road under Angkor. Moonlight spills across the temple towers like silver breath, glinting on carvings worn smooth by centuries. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the slow pulse of the jungle. Somewhere beyond the visible stone, beneath layers of soil and root, lies a path that once bound the city to the world, a road now buried in silence. It does not appear on the surface. Its shape is remembered only in fragments, an old map's faded lines, the words of a monk who claimed to have walked it in a dream, the faint ridge that reveals itself only in the slant light of dawn. Beneath these ruins, there is more than earth. There are echoes of footsteps that once rang against dressed sandstone, of wheels that creaked under the weight of tribute, of drums that marked the march of kings. It is not merely a road, but a vein of the empire's heart, long hidden, yet never dead. Let the dust settle, the echoes rise, and the forgotten throne speak once more. He begins at the west gate of Angkor Thom, where causeways stretch across wide moats, dark as still ink. The Naga balustrades coil outward, their heads flaring in stone as if guarding something not seen but felt. The road once began here, its surface laid with laterite blocks so well fitted they could bear the weight of elephants in processions. In the height of the Khmer Empire, this was no ordinary road. It was a line of ceremony and commerce, pulsing with life from the heart of the capital to the far reaches of its dominion. A historical truth lies in this. Angkor was the nexus of a vast road network, its arteries stretching hundreds of kilometers to distant cities and sacred sites. Archaeological surveys trace their alignments with startling precision, revealing engineering as advanced in stone as it was in water. Yet a fringe belief clings stubbornly to this path. Elders tell of a sleeping road that disappears to human eyes when the sun is high, only to reveal itself at twilight as a faint glow under the forest floor. A light said to come from the stones themselves, infused with blessings by the first kings. Those who follow it in silence, they say, can reach not a destination of earth, but a place where the empire still breathes in its full glory. Mystery drapes itself over these stones like the vines overhead. No inscription names the full extent of the road, and some scholars argue it served more than transport, perhaps aligning with celestial events or tracing an older sacred boundary known only to the royal priests. The exact reason for its burial remains unproven. Was it swallowed by the jungle after the empire's fall, or was it deliberately hidden to protect something at its end? In the night air, the silence deepens, but beneath his feet, he imagines the murmur of traffic that once filled this avenue, the shuffling of thousands of sandaled feet, the groan of laden carts, the low rumble of elephants returning from the far provinces. He imagines the dust rising behind them, the scent of incense and sweat mingling, the road itself warm from the sun and alive with movement. Now there is only the soft crack of a root-breaking stone. He stands where the city once exhaled in every direction at once. From Angkor's core, roads unfurl like spokes from a fiery wheel, the avenues broad and deliberate, their surfaces laid in laterite and dressed stone, sometimes ribbed with compacted earth where carts once carved ruts that hardened to memory. At dawn, the first light runs along these lines like quicksilver through veins, turning dust motes into sparks, pointing the way to places the city still names in its sleep, mountains where gods were crowned, forests where iron was birthed from ore, lakes that breathed with the year. The roads do not merely connect points on a map, they stitch meanings to one another, capital to shrine, field to granary, hospital to rest house, river to sea. He walks the main axis that once pierced Angkor Thom from south to north, through the gate of serene faces and out toward horizons that remember his footprints before he makes them. The width impresses first, then the discipline. Trees set back in orderly rows, ditches paralleling the road to drink the excess of monsoon, culverts and small stone bridges where seasonally swollen streams insisted on their own crossings. The avenue is a proposition declared in stone. The world can be made legible if one writes it with enough patience. Vendors once lined these shoulders. He hears them still. The woman who ladled palm sugar syrup into clay bowls for travelers, the potter's wheel purring, the tinker tapping dents from a bronze pot, the far laugh of a soldier on leave. On festival days, the roads became rivers of color. parasols like floating suns, banners writing scarlet commas against the sky, monks in ochre threading compassion into a crowd that knew how to hum as one. At night, torches rose along the edges like a constellation brought to earth, and the creak of axles kept time with drums from distant courtyards. A historical fact steadies the vision like a stake driven into earth. Under Jayavarman VII, the empire built a lattice of dharmasalas, rest houses for travelers, and hospitals spaced along the royal roads so that a pilgrim or messenger could find shelter and care within a day's walk. Inscriptions praise this mercy as policy. Archaeology finds their footprints like punctuation marks along the sentences of stone. Each house offered water, a hearth, a corner to sleep, proof that the road belonged to more than armies and kings. Yet, fringe belief follows with soft feet. Old stories insist these roads were first laid by celestial architects, guided at night by pillars of light that stood where no fire could stand. Others claim the stones were smoothed by Naga bodies, the serpent princess herself, coiling to press the root into earth, making it slick in monsoon and cool in drought. There are tales of fireflies gathering by the thousands to lead funeral corteges of kings, their glows concentrating at crossroads until the air looked like powdered gold, the forest's own lanterns marking the path to remembrance. He turns east, toward the road that once sought the sacred. Somewhere beyond is a path to a temple at the world's edge, where the land tilts into the sky and gods receive their offerings through wind. Another line points northwest toward sandstone quarries on Panam Kulen, the mountain that gifted Angkor its voice. To the northeast, a more secret corridor runs toward Preah Khan of Kompong Svai, a frontier sanctuary wide as a city, whose very isolation feels like a sentence swallowed before spoken. Southward, the roads fall toward lakes and river mouths, and eventually the sea, bearing rice, beeswax, and lacquer to coasts where other languages taste the empire's goods and repeat its name with new consonants. Mystery pads beside these alignments like a cat that refuses to be named. Why do some stretches hold to a ruler's logic while others bend like a prayer toward particular stars? Scholars argue whether the great avenues encode cosmology, whether an equinox sunrise ever speared a certain gate, whether the roads bearing mirrors mythic geographies of mountain and ocean carved into ritual. Others debate which sections bore paving and which were hardened earth scabbed with stone, and whether wooden bridges once overlay culverts whose mouths still grin from under leaf litter. The map is part fact, part hypothesis, the sort of drawing that trembles under candlelight and seems truer because it trembles. He kneels where a culvert mouths darkness under the road. Water once spoke here after the rains, babbling in a dialect of relief. Now, leaf mold clogs the throat. A frog watches with the proprietary calm of a new landlord. He slides his hand along the lip of the stone and feels tooling marks left by men whose names are lost and whose work still conducts the season's anger. The road is a sentence finished by those who never read it aloud. Processions breathe again in his mind, clear as bells. The caravan of salt, blocks cut from mountain pans and wrapped in woven rattan, grinding south, its passage a promise of preservation. The convoy of iron, billets heavier than stories, rasping against one another as oxen sway. The pilgrims, bare feet kissed by warm stone, singing as they go, each step a syllable in a prayer that lengthens the closer they draw to the temple that waits without impatience. The king, too, moves sometimes in this imagined day, his palanquin's curtains prayer-stitched, his shadow falling long upon the avenue, soldiers moving like punctuation around a sentence of gold. Another road crosses, and he pauses at the exchange like a reader at a stanza broken elegantly across a page. At the corner stands the ghost of a milestone, a squat laterite post that once wore numbers and perhaps the name of a shrine. It leans now, its face granulated by time, but its intention refuses erosion. You are here, it says, and also going there. The jungle breathes at the edge. For now it respects the corridor as a memory the land still honors. But lianas already stitch low loops across the path. Saplings place tentative feet where sandals counted the day. He understands, watching a leaf unroll in the pale heat, that the road's survival depends on attention as much as on stone. Every empire assigns labor to keep its sentences legible. Every empire one day fails to assign enough. He passes a Dharmasala ruin, only foundation and a suggestion of hearth. A shard of blackened clay bowl lies half buried nearby, and when he lifts it, the smell of old smoke releases as if a cook just stepped away to fetch water. A cricket sawing under the slab completes the illusion that time paused, not ended. He sets the shard back on the sill and leaves a sprig of basil for a traveler who will not come. The debate returns as he crests a slight rise and sees the road flow straight for a mile, then kink around a grove of silk cotton giants before straightening again. Was that bend ritual, protecting a sacred tree as law? Or pragmatic, a rising watercourse in wet season that made stubborn geometry foolish? The records shrug. The stones accept both explanations with equal grace. Order in Angkor is rarely tyranny. It is choreography. Toward noon, heat deepens. The road gleams, a subdued mirror of sky. He imagines the courier at such an hour, a slim man with a letter-laden satchel, pace steady, eyes measuring shade, mind mapping water stops. Letters in a world like this are rivers with one bank made of hope. The road ferries them across. In the whisper of wind that reaches him, he almost believes the fringe story that the avenues hum when empty, singing the syllables of the first king's vow. He stands still, head bowed, and the sound resolves into cicadas, distant footfalls of geckos, the creak of a palm frond. The vow, if it exists, hides in such ordinary music. Perhaps that was always the road's magic, to carry the weight of glory while sounding like nothing more than footsteps and wheels and rain. He moves on, the avenue unspooling beneath his feet toward a horizon that refuses to sharpen. Somewhere ahead, another crossing, another culvert, another rest house. Somewhere behind, a gate and a city that once taught the world to read itself in stone. The road holds both without strain. It radiates not to escape the center, but to carry the center outward until the entire plain feels crowned. The air changes as he follows the eastern road out of Angkor Thom. The walls and gates fall behind, replaced by a straight, sun-baked causeway that runs toward the horizon with the confidence of a ruler's command. It leads to a place as old as the city's memory, the Great Eastern Beret, a man-made lake so vast its far shore dissolves into haze. In its time, this was not just a reservoir, but a mirror for the heavens, a ceremonial sea. And along this road, the empire once staged processions to honor both. The causeway itself is raised above the surrounding land, its laterite foundation packed hard as fired brick. Stone steps descend at intervals toward what were once landing platforms for boats. Along the road's edge, worn blocks still hold shallow sockets where wooden posts once rose to carry banners, casting long shadows on festival days. This was the artery that led from the city's beating heart to a lake that was itself a symbol of abundance, of divine order, of the king's mastery over both water and the cosmos. A historical truth lies here, like a steady drumbeat. The East Beret, built in the 10th century under King Yasovarman Firmin, stretched nearly 8 kilometers by 2 kilometers, its embankments and sluices an engineering feat rivaling any monument in stone. It served to irrigate rice fields, but also as a stage for royal rituals, a horizontal altar mirroring the vertical mountains of the temples. Fringe belief turns the lake into a threshold. Elders tell of a time when the Beret's surface glowed at night, not with the moon's reflection, but with its own light, a sign that the Naga who drank the river's floods slept beneath its waters. The road was said to be the path of those chosen to greet her, their procession accompanied by music that only she could hear. In some tales, the lake was a gate to another realm, and walking this road in silence on certain nights meant you might arrive at its edge to find no reflection at all, only a stairway descending into light. He imagines the royal pilgrimages. The king borne on a palanquin, guarded by ranks of soldiers in polished armor, parasols blooming overhead. Musicians lined the road, gongs and drums marking each measured step. Priests in white cotton carried offerings, rice, flowers, oil lamps floating in golden bowls. At the Beret's shore, barges carved like serpents and garudas waited to bear the court to the pavilion that stood in the lake's center, its roof gilded to catch the sun. The causeway became a ceremonial bridge between earth and water, mortal and divine. Mystery still clings to this route's precise function. Was it used daily, a main thoroughfare for fishermen and farmers, Or was it reserved for the sacred, only opened when the king or the gods demanded? Archaeologists find wear on its stones, yet the alignment is too perfect, too deliberate to be merely practical. Its straightness suggests more than efficiency. It suggests intent, a ruler's will made visible in geometry. He pauses where the road dips slightly, the stone underfoot darkened by centuries of rain and shadow. Here, local legend says, a shrine once stood, a rest for the spirit before it reached the lake. Now only a scattering of sandstone blocks remain, half buried in grass. A fragment of carving shows what might be an Apsara's hand, the fingers curved in a dance gesture. He wonders if travelers once left small offerings here, asking for safe passage across the water or for their prayers to rise like the mist that still curls from the lake at dawn. The Beret's embankment rises ahead, a long, low wall of laterite now softened by grass and scattered palms. He climbs to its crest and the view opens. A sheet of water stretching into the pale distance, its surface still, broken only by the ripple of a lone fisherman's net. The road behind him seems to point like an arrow straight into the lake, ending where water and sky meet. In the old days, he knows that line did not end. It continued across the surface on a causeway now submerged, reaching the central island and its temple. A fisherman once told him a story passed down from his grandfather. During a dry season so severe, the lake's waterline retreated far from the embankment. The tip of the sunken causeway emerged. Children ran along its length until the stones vanished again under the shallows. One boy swore he saw carvings under the water, patterns too precise to be nature's work. His elders told him not to speak of it. Some roads, they said, belong to the gods even when hidden. He descends the embankment to the lake's edge. The wind off the water smells faintly of lotus and silt. Standing there, he can almost see the gilded pavilion at the center, hear the oars dipping in unison, feel the hum of 1,000 eyes watching from the shore. The causeway beneath his feet is quiet now, but its line is still visible, a memory drawn into the land so deeply that even the jungle has not erased it. The sun is lowering, turning the lake's surface to molten bronze. He begins the walk back toward the city, the causeway glowing in the angled light. Behind him, the Beret holds the sky in its stillness. Ahead, the road narrows into shadow, but its stones remain warm underfoot, as if holding the heat of centuries of footsteps. Somewhere under these stones, perhaps, lies an even older path, one that knew the lake before it was carved by kings. But that is a story for another section, and for now, the road simply carries him onward, as it always has, as it always will. He comes to a river, crossing where the land sentence pauses for breath and then continues. The bridge rises from laterite like a spine, each arch a rib, each rib holding the weight of journeys that refuse to forget themselves. Along both sides, stone serpents stretch in opposing processions, Naga balustrades with bodies braided into cords and heads flaring like fans, their many faces chipped yet watchful. In the slant of afternoon light, scales glint where lichen has polished them to a dull sheen. The road arrives, hesitates upon the arches, and then flows onward as if nothing could drown purpose forever. He places a palm upon the serpent's back. It is warm, the heat of the day stored in stone as in bone. The bodies curve with the ease of a rope pulled taut by ritual hands, devas and asuras forever churning, forever making order from the milk of chaos. Here, the bridge becomes more than crossing, it becomes reenactment. Each traveler who lays a hand along these balustrades is enrolled in the old story without needing to know its verses. Feet step. The world steadies. A historical fact steadies him in turn. Bridges like this gird the royal roads of Angkor, Speen Praptos at Kampong Kadai, among the grandest, a 12th–13th century marvel of laterite arches believed to date to Jayavarman VII, its Naga balustrades carved in sandstone and repaired across centuries. Such spans stitch the empire's wetlands and river veins into a single body, bearing ox carts, elephants, and palanquins over swells that grew teeth in the monsoon. Their engineering is plain and audacious, corbelled arches, floodways flanking the main channel, foundations set like arguments that water must learn to negotiate. Yet, fringe belief keeps its own patrol here. Villagers say that at the turn between night and dawn, the stone serpents loosen, their carved tails uncoiling to drink from the river. If a traveler attempts to cross in that liminal hour without offering a pinch of rice or a whispered apology, the bridge shortens beneath his feet. He walks and arrives nowhere until he remembers to bow. Others speak of a serpent queen who chooses one arch each year to bless. Carts that pass over that span do not lose a wheel all season, and children who nap upon it wake without fever, even in the months when water turns sly. He walks the length slowly, counting arches because counting gives the body a map the eyes cannot keep. Between the spans, the water dreams aloud, thick with leaf shadow. A fisherman's net hangs to dry on a stake downstream, its knots like punctuation against the air. He sees the gouges in stone where iron axles once skimmed too close. He sees the patches where caretakers set new blocks into a weave of old fabric. Some repairs are careful, others hurried, a mosaic of crisis and quiet strung across centuries. Mystery peers up from the water's brown gaze. Was this the original alignment of the road, or did earlier paths ford the river downstream where the bed ran shallow seasonally? Did wooden bridges precede this stone skeleton, dissolving each generation to be built again until a king decided repetition was too mortal for his intent? Scholars argue over the sequence. Some raid tool marks and quarry seams and claim a long evolution. Others insist on a single sweeping vision achieved in one reign's fierce pulse. The bridge listens to their arguments impassively and continues to carry birds from bank to bank. He pauses at mid-span, where the two Naga bodies almost touch in a stony bow. Once, guardians likely stood at either end, lions planted upon plinths, their mouths open in vowels of warning and welcome. One remains, its jaw softened by rain, its ribs a rumor under moss. Children used to climb such lions, riding conquest without risk. Now a gecko holds court upon the powdered nose and flicks its tail like a banner. The river speaks in footnotes. After drought, it sulks low, revealing the bridge's ankles. After flood, it climbs the arches' throats and bellies the road with spray. He imagines a season when waters rose too quickly, battering the laterite with tree trunks and the trunks with other trunks, until the arches hummed with strain. Teams of men would have hauled stone to shore up the abutments, women passing baskets of rubble like prayer beads, boys clapping to keep fear from gaining its own rhythm. The Naga heads, gazing ahead without blinking, would have seen the whole pageant and kept their counsel. A second historical note threads the scene. Many Angkorian bridges bore Naga balustrades not merely as ornament, but as cosmological signage, the crossing itself an echo of the cosmic causeway that binds worlds. The road is not only a path between places, it is a path between conditions. To cross is to change, even if only a little. The empire wrote this instruction into stone so that even the illiterate could read with their feet. Legends thicken on the far bank like reeds. An old man once told him that when the first king came to inspect the finished bridge, he demanded the serpents bear their true bodies to test loyalty. They did, shedding stone as a snake sheds old skin. The sight blinded 3 courtiers and cracked the river with heat. The king laughed and commanded them to wear stone again for the comfort of men. Since then, the serpents wait patiently for the day when another sovereign will speak the same language and grant recess again. Until then, they serve by pretending to be what they are not. He kneels to study a patch where the sandstone parapet meets laterite core. The join is clean, then muddied, then clean again, cycles of care left visible like tree rings. He pictures a royal edict carved on palm leaf. Assign 50 men to repair the 4th arch before the first rains. Send palm sugar as pay. Burn resin at the bridge spirit's shrine when the work is done. The practical and the unseen, braided like the Naga's rope, a habit of governance as much as belief. The debate that pries at scholars' sleep turns here on direction. This bridge faces a country of options, southeast toward river ports and sea trade, northeast toward frontier sanctuaries where kings tested the edge of their dominion, due east toward quarries that fed temples their syllables of stone. Which downstream silt wore the road smoother? Which upstream's iron scented the carts metallic? In the absence of milestones, answers become arguments. In the presence of water, arguments dissolve into reflections. He stands again and continues toward the far bank. The serpent heads here are more weathered, their noses lopped by time or triumph, their crowns softened into anonymity. and yet the posture remains proud, not pride of ownership, but of function. They hold a line. They keep a promise. Cross here, and we will carry you. Beyond the bridge, the road vanishes into a corridor of shade. Lianas fall like curtains. The undergrowth presses close, then steps back, then presses again, as if negotiating new terms with the old stone. He senses the lost road beneath his soles as a kind of memory the body remembers better than the mind. A slight crown to shed water, the faint tilt of drainage toward ditches now filled with ferns, the cadence of even spacing where dharmasalas once stood like commas. Night gathers early under trees. The river darkens, its gloss turned to ink. He looks back. In the last light, the Naga heads seem to glow, not with magic, but with the simple fact of facing west, catching that steady, forgiving fire before it drowns. For a heartbeat, he thinks he sees the serpents move, the tiniest shiver along a flank. It is a trick of wind, he tells himself. It is a trick the bridge has played for centuries on eyes that want to believe effort breathes. He steps off the last stone and feels soil again. The crossing leaves something behind him, takes something with him. That is what bridges do. They are edits in a landscape, asking the traveler to revise himself as he passes. Behind him, the river keeps writing its one long sentence. Ahead, the road curls into shadow, and the serpents, satisfied, return to stone. The road bends eastward, tracing the edge of an immense stillness. The West Baret's quieter sibling, the East Baret now only a shadow of its former breadth. But here, another water giant waits in silence, the Jayatataka Barai, built under Jayavarman VII as a reservoir, a sanctuary for the rains, and a mirror for the empire's ambitions. Its western embankment rises from the flat plain like a sleeping serpent, and for a long stretch, the lost road clings to its flank. In places, the earth swells with old embankment walls, now softened under grass and tamarind shade. The jungle has not devoured everything. It has chosen to drape, not erase. The surface of the Baret is a scatter of green, lotus leaves wide as shields, their undersides holding pools of rainwater from last night's storm. Waterbirds stalk the shallows, their long necks weaving between stems like scribes searching for forgotten words. Somewhere beneath this quiet lies a stone landing, once the road's embrace with the reservoir. Here, boatmen waited for orders, their vessels ready to ferry rice, soldiers, or priests across the man-made lake to the temple island of Neekpeen at its heart. History stands clear. Jayatataka Barai was constructed in the late 12th century as part of Jayavarman VII's massive building program, which also included hospitals, rest houses, and temples. The Barai was more than irrigation. It was a cosmic diagram, its central island temple symbolizing the mythical lake Anavatapta, from which 4 great rivers flow to nourish the world. The road running along its shore was no mere convenience. It was an axis in a grand spiritual cartography, aligning mortal movement with celestial geography. Yet, in the old telling, this stretch of road was said to be haunted by the voice of the Baret itself. Fishermen claimed that in certain mists, the lake whispered in an old tongue, offering safe passage to those who could answer in kind. The road was known as the path of those who listen, and travelers who ignored the murmur sometimes found their journeys lengthened, the road looping upon itself until humility was learned. Monks spoke of a Naga prince dwelling beneath the water, whose mood determined whether the road was dry and firm or slick with sudden flood. Walking here, he notices the road is higher than the surrounding land, a deliberate choice to protect it from the Baret's seasonal moods. Laterite blocks peak from the soil in neat rows, their alignment too precise to be accident. Between them, pale sand has settled, fine grains carried from the reservoir's edges by centuries of wind. Trees line the road's inner edge, their roots curling over stones like careful fingers, avoiding a grip too tight, as though they too respect the path. The mystery that troubles archaeologists lies beneath. Ground surveys have shown irregularities under this stretch, as if another structure lies buried beneath the roadbed. Some theorize an earlier canal-side quay, others an older route predating the Baret itself. No excavation has yet dared to peel the road away. Its stability is fragile, and the jungle's patience is not infinite. The question remains: was the Baret built to accompany the road, or was the road shifted to embrace the Bure? He stops where the embankment narrows, and a spillway once allowed water to escape during heavy rains. The spillway's stone blocks still show grooves where floodgates once slid into place. Moss has claimed the lower tiers, but the upper stones remain warm from the sun. Looking down, he imagines the rush of monsoon waters, the road vibrating faintly under the strain. Guards must have stood here in the rain, watching the gates, waiting for the signal to raise or lower them, their faces lit by stormlight. From here, the view across the Bure is both open and secretive. The Temple of Neek Peen is just a suggestion on the horizon, its form blurred by distance and shimmer. In the old days, the road's travelers might have paused here, their destination visible yet still a journey away. Perhaps they felt the same pull he feels now, that strange mixture of yearning and stillness, as if the water itself holds back the final truth until one earns it. He takes a step off the laterite and into the grass between road and embankment. The earth is soft here, the kind of softness that remembers water. He bends and runs a hand through the grass, feeling the coolness rise from below. If he dug here, perhaps he would find pottery shards, rusted boat nails, or the bones of offerings cast into the Bure. The wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of lotus. The sun edges west and the road darkens slightly under the shadow of taller trees. A king once rode here, his chariot wheels biting into the dust, leaving tracks alongside the hoofprints of the royal horses. Priests would have walked behind, chanting mantras meant to keep the waters tame. The sound of drums might have echoed along the embankment, bouncing off water and stone, weaving a ribbon of music that reached the far temple. He resumes his walk, the Bure's still surface keeping pace at his side. Now and then, the road dips where stones have sunk or shifted, the gaps filled with leaves and loam. Each dip feels like a breath, as if the road itself is alive, inhaling and exhaling under the weight of time. Somewhere in the reeds, a bird takes flight, startling the silence. Its wings flash silver in the light, and for a heartbeat, he imagines it as a messenger, a remnant of those days when kings believed birds carried omens. The road accepts this moment without comment, as it has accepted every moment for nearly 1,000 years. Ahead, the Bure's edge curves away, and the road turns inward, back toward the jungle's grip. The open water recedes behind him, leaving only the sound of his footsteps and the rustle of leaves. But the presence of the Bure lingers, as if water remembers those who walk beside it. The road, too, remembers, holding the echo of processions, offerings, and the endless rhythm of feet that once bound water, stone, and sky into a single empire's dream. He leaves the Bure's hush, and the road lifts slightly, gathering itself like a sentence about to announce a proper name. Ahead, the corridor widens into a clearing smoothed by long use, and he knows this place by its posture. A caravan stop. Even now, the ground keeps the memory of many feet. The laterite is packed to a glaze, and a rectangle of low stones sketches the footprint of a hall that once held a roof of tile and beam. Wind threads through tall grass where animals were tied, and in the shade, an old tamarind leans as if listening for bells that have stopped ringing. He stands where traders used to unlash their bundles. He can almost see the choreography, oxen blowing dust from their nostrils, the gloss of sweat on their flanks, men easing wicker panniers to the ground, women lifting jars of palm sugar, their wrists braced by callous and habit. Smells arrive like a ledger, lacquer's sharp breath, beetles' peppered sweetness, smoked fish, beeswax, cardamom. Words cross the air in different weights. Khmer, Cham, Lao, a Chinese dialect carried by sailors hoofed inland, a Malay phrase bright as sunlight on water. Deals are struck with fingers, eyebrows, silences. Copper clinks softly. Laughter understands all languages. A historical fact steadies the vision. Inscriptions from the reign of Jayavarman VII enumerate a network of dharmasalas, often called houses of fire, and arogyasalas, or hospitals, placed along the royal roads. Many scholars read the figures as roughly 121 rest houses and 102 hospitals across the realm, a lattice of shelter and care that allowed messengers, merchants, and pilgrims to move under the empire's protection. At some sites, stone thresholds and laterite platforms still outline these halls. At others, only a scatter of roofing tiles and ash marks the steadiness of hospitality. The fringe belief gives the halls a secret life. Old people say each house of fire kept a lamp that never went out, tended by a guardian who spoke with the road's spirit at dawn. Travelers left a pinch of rice or a sliver of salt on the hearthstone. In return, the lamp's flame would remember their faces so that the forest would not. To sleep under that roof without bowing to the flame was to invite a special kind of forgetting, the kind where a man wakes and finds he has lost his way back to his child's name. A tale adds that in the hottest month the fire sang, a low note that only animals heard, so caravans gathered there, held their breath while oxen dozed without dreams. He walks the perimeter and finds a row of post holes, dark as pupils in the soil, a grid of absences that reveals the hall's ribs. In one corner lies a shard of a roof finial, glazed in a green that still remembers rain. He imagines the hall at night, a rectangle of gold pooled from lamps, the drone of insects outside, the murmur of prayers stitched into snores. A child turns in sleep against her mother's side. A guard stirs the coals, feeding the house a twig as if bribing it to keep the road's line unbroken until morning. Mystery sits with the ashes, persistent. Scholars continue to argue over the Dharmasala's purpose. Were these truly secular hostels or ritual way stations where pilgrims enacted the road's sacred geography with rest and flame? Some foundations stand near images of Lokeshvara and are read as shrines of compassion. Others, bare of icon, seem practical, the mercy of a king expressed in shelter alone. The records offer both vocabulary and silence. Perhaps the ambiguity is honest. A place can be a bed and a blessing at once. He follows the track as it narrows into scrub, then opens onto another expanse, the kind of field that is also a market when enough feet agree. Here, on certain days, the road thickened with color. Cottons dyed indigo and madder, lacquer bowls burnished like captured sunset, jars of fish sauce that promised salt through months of rain. From the northeast came iron billets dark as night. From the south, ceramic jars whose bellies remembered the sea. From the forests, resins and aromatic woods carried like portable shadows. Traders uncorked stories with their goods, and the city learned the shapes of distant coasts without leaving its map. In a bright noon imagined from memory, a courier arrives, wiry, bare-shouldered, the king's sigil stitched in faded thread upon his sash. He drinks without looking up, bows to the hall's lamp, and lays a palm leaf letter upon the headman's board. The seal is pressed with haste. The words inside likely walk before they are spoken, orders to dredge a canal before the first rains, a petition from a monastery for a new roof, a warning that bandits have learned to ride like soldiers. The road carries intimacy and command in the same breath. It knows the weight of a love letter and the weight of an edict, and it does not judge either. A jongleur, one of those wanderers who pay their tax in stories, recites near the doorway while traders count coin. He sings of a bridge of serpents that wakes and drinks at dawn, of a lake that answers in dreams if you speak its true name, of a king who walked this road barefoot to heal a fever in the land. The audience nods not because they believe, but because belief oils the hinge of travel. To step away from one's thatch and field is to enter a grammar where wonder declines into the useful. Another historical thread ties the scene to a distant witness. In the late 13th century, the Chinese envoy Zhou Daguan observes ox carts, markets, and processions in Angkor. His record of daily logistics, parasol etiquette, ferrying across moats, the thud of wooden wheels, proves that movement is the empire's ordinary miracle. He does not walk every road, but his words sketch their consequences. The city breathes because its limbs do. He moves on, matching his pace to the rhythm that roads teach. A long stride for the shaded stretches, short steps over broken patches, a pause where a culvert sighs. On a rise, he stops before two parallel ditches that once fenced the path against monsoon tantrums. Between them, the crown of the road is slightly higher, a quiet geometry designed to shed trouble to either side. He thinks of how many careful hands maintain this crest, the men who dug silt from the ditches, the women who retamped stones loosened by flood, the children chasing frogs while learning the difference between a weed that holds the bank and a vine that eats it. Fringe tales keep pace. People say the road chooses its favorites, caravans that travel kindly, sharing water, lifting wheels for strangers stuck in ruts, arrive sooner than those who spit at beggars or laugh at monks. The road shortens for soft hearts, the saying goes, and though no ruler carved it into stone, the proverb feels truer than most inscriptions. A trader who travels with such luck touches the doorframe of each house of fire with 2 fingers and never camps beneath a silk cotton tree on nights when gibbons sing like bells. Mystery, broader than logistics, asks its larger question. Where did all this flow ultimately go? To river mouths linked to maritime trade, to ports whose names are now silt, to coastal emporia that taught Angkor the prices of porcelain and pepper? Or did the bulk of wealth cycle inland, rice to temple, temple to labor, labor to monument, in a loop more spiritual than commercial? The debate endures. Pottery scatters its clues, pollen tells what grew, but the exact arithmetic of exchange is a ledger the jungle has hidden well. Evening leans across the road. The caravan stop he left behind cools into a square of shadow, and for a moment he hears it again. Bells, clucks, a mother's hush, hawkers shutting their mouths and opening their hands toward sleep. He imagines the lamp in the hall of fire, its wick snipped, its light lowered but not lost, a small sun entrusted to a roof. On the threshold, the caretaker sits cross-legged, whispering to the flame as if reviewing the day's travelers by name. On nights like this, the road itself seems to exhale, pleased that its burdens redistributed as rest, its distances exchanged for shelter. He walks until the stars catch in the leaves, and the dark road drinks the last of the color. Here and there, glowworms bead the ditch like a forgotten necklace. A jackal yips once, then reconsiders. He thinks of all the mornings that will follow this one, all the caravans that will use this sentence of stone to finish their thought, all the lives tethered to a geography that teaches mercy as infrastructure. Behind him, the invisible beret breathes. Ahead, the forest prepares another hall where a flame waits to become someone's map. The canopy thickens, pulling the road into shadow, and the air takes on that deep green coolness that smells of wet bark and the hidden musk of orchids. Here, the road becomes a seam between 2 worlds, one foot in the open empire of men, the other pressing against the primeval kingdom of the forest. The laterite blocks are darker, slick in places where water seeps from the embankment. Ferns lace across the edges, their fronds trembling with every whisper of wind. He walks carefully, for the jungle here is not merely a bystander. It leans in, curious, pressing roots under the road and vines over it, testing the old bond between stone and time. Cicadas sing in long, metallic notes as though sharpening the air. A flash of movement, a green vine snake coiled over a fallen block, reminds him that this stretch is less traveled, more claimed by those who do not care for human maps. History threads through the leaves. This section of the road once connected to one of Angkor's vital east-west arteries, linking the city to outlying temples and, beyond them, to the frontiers of the empire. Royal convoys would have passed here under layers of ceremony, elephants draped in gold-threaded cloth, parasols marking rank, and soldiers in lacquered armor. Yet the grandeur was not immune to nature. Records suggest that certain wet seasons saw entire portions of this road submerged, requiring repairs, diversions, or complete rebuilding. In the forest's folklore, this is the Vale of the Naga, where the serpent king Mukalinda is said to have risen from the flooded path to shield a meditating hermit from the rains. Villagers tell of travelers who, upon crossing here during monsoon, found the forest silent, no bird, no insect, until they reached the far side, where the first sound they heard was their own name spoken softly as if by someone walking just behind them. He passes a place where the road narrows, flanked on both sides by low, crumbling walls. Their stones are carved faintly with lotus motifs, now worn to gentle curves by centuries of rain. The lotus, symbol of purity rising from mud, feels almost like a promise whispered to travelers. You will emerge from this shadow into light again. But the mystery of these walls lingers. Were they meant as mere embankment reinforcements, or did they once frame a ceremonial gateway marking entry into sacred ground? No inscription survives to answer. Overhead, strangler figs have claimed old host trees, their roots pouring down like molten stone, gripping anything they touch. One fig has grown around the edge of the road, its roots locking over a half-buried laterite block. He touches the root's warm surface, the living holding hands with the crafted, each neither entirely victor nor vanquished. A fallen milestone lies half hidden in moss. Its surface is rough, but a faint carving remains, an image of a wheel. It might once have marked distance to a city or a temple, but no numbers survive. Wheels, chariot, ox cart, cosmic dharma turn in more than one sense here. He wonders if the marker was set to reassure travelers or to remind them that even the road is part of a larger, unending circuit. The air grows heavier as he moves deeper into the green. Sunlight breaks only in fragments, falling through leaves in shifting coins of gold. Insects dart through the beams. A butterfly, deep blue with white-tipped wings, drifts just ahead, as if leading him. The sound of water grows stronger, a low rush that seems too steady for mere rain runoff. Soon, he reaches a stone culvert, an ancient drain that channels a forest stream under the road. Its arch is made of perfectly fitted laterite blocks, still holding against centuries of flood. The stream runs clear, carrying fallen petals from some hidden bloom upstream. He kneels and cups water into his hands, tasting the faint mineral tang. Once, this stream might have been guarded. Perhaps small shrines stood nearby, honoring the spirits of water and road alike. Fringe belief holds that every culvert along the king's roads had a keeper, not a man, but a spirit who counted every crossing. If you were kind, the keeper would make the stones grip your feet firmly. If cruel, the stones would turn slick and untrustworthy. The keepers were said to move like shadows along the water, their eyes the color of wet stone. No one claimed to have seen them clearly, yet offerings of flowers and betel nut appeared near culverts long after the empire's fall. He stands, shaking water from his fingers, and looks ahead. The road begins to rise, shedding some of its dampness, as though the forest is willing to release him for now. But the sense of being watched remains, not with malice, but with the alert patience of something ancient measuring his steps. A mystery remains here that no archaeologist has resolved. Why does the road dip and curve in ways that defy the shortest path between known sites? Some believe it followed the lay of sacred topography, aligning with unseen lines of power or older trails used long before Angkor. Others suggest the forest itself dictated the bends, the road built to skirt certain groves considered taboo, where the oldest trees were left untouched. He moves on, his footsteps muffled by damp earth where the laterite has sunk or vanished entirely. The air lightens, the cicada's song grows brighter, and somewhere ahead the jungle begins to open. Yet he glances back once to the shadowed stretch behind him. It is not just a road he leaves, it is a passage that feels alive, a narrow realm where stone, root, and legend braid together, holding the memory of every king, trader, pilgrim, and wanderer who dared to pass under the veil of the Naga. He reaches a stretch where certainty thins. The road, so firm in its intention a moment ago, begins to blur at the edges, its laterite blocks fewer, its crown slumped, its ditches swollen with fern. A cart path veers off to skirt a low, wet meadow. Hoofprints choose that detour. Human feet follow prints rather than stone. Here the road does not end. It forgets. The jungle, patient copyist that it is, rewrites punctuation first. A culvert clogged, a milestone toppled, a post hole filled with leaf mold. Then it edits nouns. A bridge becomes a ford, a dharmasala becomes a rumor, a crossing becomes the place where the palms bend. The sentence still runs on, but the grammar loosens until even the careful reader stumbles. He finds a scatter of stones at a field edge, squared faces turned up like teeth in grass. A farmer has built a low dike from older blocks, laterite borrowed from the empire's library to line the margin of rice. He does not fault the choice. Rice asks for hands more urgently than memory does. Farther on, a house stands on pillars jointly carved by monks in rain. Its stair is 2 steps of old road. Feet learn history without intending to. A historical fact settles like a sober bird on a branch. In the early 15th century, Angkor suffers a crisis recorded in foreign chronicles. Ayuthyayan forces pressing, droughts and floods twisting the hydraulic city's ribs, and royal gravity migrates downriver. Later capitals, Longvek, then eventually Phnom Penh, gather the court and trade. The monumental building slows upon the plain. When power moves, maintenance loses its salary. Ditches silt faster, culverts gossip less loudly. The crews who kept road crowns high grow smaller, older, occupied elsewhere. An empire's arteries harden not by blow, but by neglect. Fringe belief breathes through the reeds. Villagers say the road chose to vanish, offended by cruelty, by soldiers who beat a monk at a bridge, by a tacksman who took a widow's ox. The road walks away, they say, meaning that the stones lie down, and the path withdraws into the night like a snake seeking new shade. Another telling is gentler. The Naga princess, pitying the city's exhaustion, unspooled her body across the avenue at dusk, covering it with scales that looked like leaf shadows. By morning, only those who had walked kindly could find their way. The rest wandered until humility softened their souls. He moves across a flat, bright patch that was surely once paved. The road's bed still holds the memory of level, the faint arching crown that sheds water. But the joints, the old matrix of fitted stone, have loosened. Ant mounds stipple the surface, a silk cotton's feeder roots lace the gaps with delicate insistence. At the far end, the path breaks against a tangle of thorn that has grown overnight for 40 years. He could push through, but the road he follows prefers restraint to force. Its original makers chose curves around taboo groves rather than axes. Beside the tangle, a shallow depression pools sky. Children call such puddles the eye of the road. Dragonflies patrol in figure eights. A frog declares ownership. He kneels and sees the past in the reflection, the long procession of ox carts with their conical loads of salt, a file of pilgrims with lotus stalks tucked behind their ears, a courier slashing noon into quarters. Then a leaf skates the water and the picture scatters. The road lives here only when nothing disturbs it. The mystery that vexes scholars gathers like heat. Did the road fade simply because the city's heart moved, because rice and river trade reattracted the flow southward? Or did deliberate acts hasten disappearance? Some argue that stones were lifted to mend temples after storms, others that sections were buried with earth to deny enemies a straight run at gates. A few propose older lines, prehistoric tracks, lay beneath these laterite skins. When the Angkorian cloak wore through, the older trails resurfaced like ghosts. The land keeps its answers under many layers, and each layer believes it is final. He steps into a corridor of bamboo that whispers with its own weather. The culms lean over the track like monks conferring. Here the road exists in sound, dry leaves clicking, a hollow tone underfoot when he finds a remaining stone. He touches a culm, and it sings up his bones. In the middle distance, a hump marks a collapsed culvert. To one side, a rectangle of darker soil suggests fire, once, perhaps the hearth of a house of rest. The jungle has manners. It leaves outlines as if to spare the tender-hearted. At the next clearing, he finds the stump of a milestone sunk to its eyelids in loam. Lichen has written an alphabet of patience upon it. He rubs the face with a palm, and, for a moment, a groove deepens into meaning. Half a wheel, maybe, or half a flower. He thinks of the man who set this stone, how he might have measured distance by paces and sun, how he might have whispered an apology to the spirits whose ground he pierced. He wonders when the last traveler traced this carving with a finger and recalculated his hope. A woman appears on the far side of the clearing, bare feet powdered with laterite dust, a bundle of thin firewood balanced on her head. She uses the old path in the practical way, not to honor kings, but to shorten a day. When he asks if this was once the road to the Great Lake, she nods and points with her chin, then says softly that at night one must walk a little left of where the stones used to be. The road shifts after dark, she explains, so spirits can pass. She smiles, not to mock him, but to comfort the living with a grammar that includes the dead. Then she vanishes into bamboo, her ankles ringing faintly with tin. He spies another theft-turned-sacrament, a threshold stone from a dharmasala set now into a homestead's doorway. Its center is worn to a shallow bowl by generations of feet. On the sill sits a clay lamp. The house's master has reinvented the old exchange. Light for passage, passage for light. The empire's infrastructure migrates into family and survives. The argument about disappearance continues in his head as if two scholars paced beside him. One insists upon climate and hydraulics, the grinding arithmetic of flood, then drought, then flood, roads undermined by watercourses fattened and shifted, embankments eaten from below. Another points to politics and war, patrols thinned, tribute caravans fewer, provinces less keen to march their rice toward a capital now far away. Both voices soften when they come to the question of intention. Did anyone decide the road should close, or did it close as eyes do when sleep finally catches? He enters a grove where palms lift as if to show empty hands. Between them, the path is two threads and a wish. The sunlight is a pale dust. The air carries the green taste of something crushed underfoot he cannot name. Once, a gate must have stood here, a pair of guardian lions now reduced to damp mounds with a single tooth of sandstone each. A king would have sat his elephant just beyond, to receive petitions or to honor a shrine at the hour when light becomes gold's patient cousin. Now, a hornbill rattles its wing beats through the canopy and adds a punctuation mark to no sentence. Fringe belief adds a coda to vanishing. There is a night each year, some say, when the lost road lifts itself like a fish breaking water. The stones glow faintly, a spine from city to lake, from bridge to threshold. If you walk then with a bowl and a flower, your dead will walk beside you and forgive everything that needs forgiving. No one agrees on the night. Perhaps that is mercy, spreading the hope across calendar and village. He stands upon what might be the last reliable stretch for a while. Ahead, the jungle sifts the path into threads, then into guesses, then into green. He could turn back, map what he has seen, remark upon eddies and absences. He does not. He steps forward into a version of the road that exists only because he believes it does. Under his soles, a stone answers every third step. Between answers, he trusts the land's muscle memory, the way a root worn by centuries leaves a tension in the ground that a body can feel if it quiets enough. Evening thickens. The first bats script the air. He asks the road a question without words. Where did you go when no one watched you? The leaves reply in a language that can be translated two ways. I remained. I moved. Both are true. Both are how things disappear. The jungle closes in like a great lung, inhaling shadows and exhaling a breath that smells of damp stone, rotting leaves, and unseen flowers blooming in darkness. Here, the road is no longer a clear ribbon but a rumor underfoot, a faint rise in the ground, an alignment of trees that somehow feels deliberate. His eyes search for the laterite's dull red, but all he finds is green upon green, the kind that swallows memory whole. He slows his pace. The light, already dim under the canopy, thickens into something almost tactile. Birds have gone quiet. Only the occasional rustle in the underbrush betrays life. This is the stretch locals call the Hallowed Hollow, a corridor said to be walked by kings long after their bones had turned to dust. It is here, the stories claim, that the spirits of Angkor's rulers still ride, astride elephants woven from moonlight, following the path to a temple that no longer stands. A historical fact presses against this silence. The Khmer road network, at its height, stretched hundreds of kilometers, its raised embankments visible even today from the air. Archaeological surveys show that many of these roads had drainage ditches, laterite paving, and stone bridges, feats of engineering that rivaled the empire's temples. Yet, here, in this shadowed hollow, the empire's precision has given way to the forest's improvisation. The measured span between milestones has collapsed under roots. The edges have blurred into the swamp's creeping fingers. Some fringe believers insist that the road did not simply erode, it was hidden. They tell of royal priests who, foreseeing the fall of Angkor, called upon forest spirits to cloak this path in living green, so that enemies could not find their way to the sacred heart of the empire. In their telling, the road still exists in perfect form beneath the roots and moss, waiting for a sign to awaken. Until then, the forest wears it like a borrowed robe. He brushes aside a curtain of hanging lianas and finds a fragment of bridge, just 3 stones wide, spanning what is now little more than a trickle of water. The rest of the structure is gone, collapsed into the stream bed, or perhaps carried away to build something else. The water here is dark, reflecting not the sky but the canopy above, a patchwork of shifting leaves and glimmers. Insects skitter across its skin. Beneath, something stirs, a fish, or perhaps only the weight of the current shifting against stone. Crossing, he notices faint carvings on one block, not letters, but symbols, spirals, lotus petals, and what might be the stylized coils of a naga. They are shallow, weathered, nearly smooth, but the pattern repeats just enough to feel intentional. Were they blessings for safe passage, or perhaps a ward, a reminder that this was a road watched over by more than just men? No inscription remains to tell. Ahead, the ground swells again, lifting him onto a narrow embankment that cuts through swampy ground. The air here hums with mosquitoes. Water hyacinth clusters in the ditches, their pale violet flowers nodding gently. He can almost hear the footfalls of ancient processions, the thud of elephant pads, the creak of cart axles, as if they have sunk into the earth and now rise up again under certain conditions of heat and silence. Mystery clings to this place like the mist that sometimes coils through the undergrowth. Why was this section of the road so elaborately constructed, with raised embankments and flanking ditches, only to vanish so completely just a short distance away? Some argue that this was once a sacred approach to an important site, perhaps an unknown temple now buried in the jungle. Others suggest it led to a royal landing on the Great Lake, a point from which tribute and goods flowed to the capital. But if so, why do the records fall silent? A break in the canopy reveals a single towering silk cotton tree at the road's edge, its roots spilling like frozen rivers over the ground. One massive root flows directly across the roadbed, splitting it as surely as time itself. He stops, placing a hand on the root's smooth surface. Warm from the day's stored heat, it feels alive, almost breathing. In the stillness, he imagines the root speaking, not in words, but in the slow language of trees. We were here before you. We will be here after. Somewhere in the branches above, a bird calls, a long descending note that echoes strangely. It reminds him of the tales villagers tell of the pralay bird, a spirit messenger whose cry means you are walking in the footprints of the dead. To hear it once is a blessing. To hear it twice is a summons. He waits, but the call does not come again. He moves on, following the embankment until it curves and begins to descend. Here the forest seems to lean back, allowing more light to filter through. Patches of the old laterite reappear, flecked with quartz that sparkles faintly in the sun. He crouches, running his fingers over the gritty surface, feeling the sharp edges where stones still fit tightly. For a moment, it is as if the road is awake again, stretching its spine after a long sleep. But just ahead, it disappears once more into a low, marshy area where the jungle has claimed every stone. The path becomes guesswork, guided only by subtle rises in the ground and the way the trees seem to grow in two loose, parallel lines. He steps carefully, each footfall sinking slightly into damp earth, until he emerges onto firmer ground, where the road, as if by some quiet miracle, returns in a short, perfect stretch. No one knows why certain fragments survive, while others dissolve entirely. Perhaps this section was shielded by a canopy dense enough to deflect the worst rains, or perhaps, as some old guides insist, the stones here were blessed with a ritual so strong that even centuries of neglect could not undo it. Whatever the reason, the sight of it feels like a promise, proof that the road still remembers itself, even in pieces. The jungle presses close again, but he walks on with renewed resolve, feeling that he is following not just a road, but a pulse, one that beats slowly, deep beneath the roots, leading him further into the empire's green and shadowed heart. The land rises gently, and the road climbs with it, as though leading toward some unseen throne hidden beyond the ridgeline. Here the jungle parts just enough to reveal the bones of the empire beneath its green skin. The laterite blocks lie in neat lines, half buried, their flat surfaces flecked with moss that catches the light like gold dust. The air is cooler, touched by a faint breeze that carries the scent of flowering creepers high in the canopy. He senses it before he sees it, the quiet solemnity of a place that was meant to impress. Then, through the leaves, the shape emerges. A ruined rest house, one of the dharmasalas built along the great roads of the Khmer Empire to shelter travelers. Its doorway still stands, lintel carved with worn lotus motifs, though the roof has long since fallen. The floor is a mix of packed earth and scattered stone. The walls lean inward like old men nodding off in mid-conversation. A historical fact holds steady here. Inscriptions at other sites tell of Jayavarman VII, the great Buddhist king, ordering these rest houses every 15 kilometers along his empire's roads. They were waypoints not just for merchants and pilgrims, but for soldiers and envoys, a network of hospitality binding the far corners of the realm to its heart. This one, half swallowed by roots, still whispers that purpose. But in the villagers' telling, it was never merely a rest stop. They say a guardian spirit once dwelled here, a pale woman with eyes the color of monsoon clouds, who would appear at dusk to offer water to weary travelers. If they accepted with gratitude, she would guide them safely through the night. If they ignored her, she would turn the road behind them to mist, and they would wander in circles until dawn. Some claim they have seen her even now, her figure framed in the doorway, waiting. Inside, a single laterite block has been blackened by centuries of fire, a hearth for warmth, for cooking, for the comfort of flame in a world of shadows. He kneels beside it, running his fingers over the surface, imagining the countless hands that fed twigs and logs into its mouth. Perhaps a merchant from Champa, traveling with silk, perhaps a monk from the Mekong, carrying a basket of texts, perhaps an imperial courier bearing orders sealed with the royal mark. All sat here, listening to the night sounds beyond the road, their stories rising in smoke through the roof beams that no longer exist. A fragment of pottery lies in the dirt, the curve of a jar's lip, smooth from use. He turns it over in his palm, feeling its weight. Who last drank from it? Was it dropped in haste or placed here as an offering to the guardian spirit? The answer is lost, like so much else, to the forest's quiet digestion. Stepping back outside, he follows the road as it skirts the base of the ridge. Here, the jungle is denser, roots twisting across the surface like the veins of a giant hand. In places, the laterite has been lifted by the slow strength of these roots, stones tilting like books on an uneven shelf. Still, the alignment holds, the road's straightness asserting itself through centuries of pressure. The mystery of this section is its persistence. Why has the rest house survived here when so many others have vanished entirely? Some scholars suggest it was maintained longer because of its strategic position, a halfway point between Angkor and an important river port. Others whisper of hidden relics buried nearby, treasures of the empire guarded by the spirit in the doorway. Metal detectors and ground scans have found nothing, but perhaps the road itself is the treasure, a ribbon of empire still connecting two distant worlds. The ridge path leads to a small bridge, its laterite slabs worn smooth by feet and water alike. Below, a narrow stream trickles over stones, its banks thick with ferns. A single white heron stands motionless in the shallows, its reflection trembling with the current. In the dry season, this would be an easy crossing. But during the monsoon, the stream swells into a torrent, and the bridge becomes the only safe passage for miles. On the far side, he finds another clue, a low platform of stones, square and precise, half covered by creeping vines. Perhaps it once held a shrine, a marker for travelers to leave offerings before continuing their journey. Now, a sapling grows from its center, leaves trembling in the breeze. The jungle has taken the offering for itself. The road bends, following the ridge's contour, and suddenly the canopy opens onto a view. Far below, the forest stretches unbroken, a rolling green ocean. Somewhere in that sea lies the Great Lake, its surface hidden from here but its presence felt, a vast reservoir that once fed the empire's canals and rice fields, and still breathes life into the land. He pauses on the bend, listening. The wind carries faint sounds, not of the present jungle, but of the past. The murmur of travelers, the creak of wooden wheels, the rhythmic clink of iron-shod hooves. They fade quickly, leaving only the rustle of leaves. But the sensation lingers, as if the road itself remembers and is willing to share fragments with those who walk slowly enough. Beneath his feet, the stones hold steady, their surfaces worn but unbroken. He steps forward, deeper into the ridge path, the rest house now hidden behind him, the promise of more mysteries ahead. The jungle waits, patient as always, to decide what it will reveal next. Morning filters through high leaves like sifted gold, and the road's voice drops from thunder to whisper. He comes to a clearing patrolled not by oxen or elephants, but by tripods, flagging tape, and the careful patience of men and women who read the earth the way monks read sutras. Trowels glint. A string line hums faintly in the breeze. The jungle stands back a respectful step, as if curious what story will be coaxed from its kept silence. He kneels at the trench edge and looks into a cross-section of time. Layers present themselves in subdued colors: rust, umber, a thin gray seam the width of a fingernail. A young archaeologist taps that seam with her brush and smiles. "Hard pan," she says softly, though he hears it as heartbeat. Above it, centuries of silt and leaf fall. Within it, the compacted surface of a road that once took the weight of kings. It does not gleam. It endures. Beyond the trench, a rectangle of earth has been shaved smooth to a dull shine. From certain angles, faint stripes appear where laterite blocks have slumped and their joints held on to dust differently than stone. The pattern flickers, there, then gone, as if the past is a fish that surfaces only for the patient. He walks along the grid pegs, mind counting the metronome of measured steps. A tablet on a crate shows pale ribbons ghosting across a green canopy. A LiDAR map, the forest peeled like a veil to reveal streets, ponds, mounds, the quiet sprawl of a city long mistaken for wilderness. A historical fact stands in the shade beside him. Airborne laser surveys in the early 21st century revealed that Angkor's urban fabric spreads far beyond the temple precincts. Rectilinear blocks, reservoirs, embankments, and roads braided into a landscape engineering web of startling extent. What looks like isolated monuments from the ground resolves from the air into neighborhoods, industrial kilns, and long, straight causeways stitched to distant sanctuaries. The jungle was never empty. It merely kept its pages closed. Fringe belief lifts its head at the trench rim. The dig team's cook, an old woman with a scarf tied bright as hibiscus, insists the soil sings when it's ready to give up a secret. She presses the back of her hand to the ground and announces that today it hums in A. "Good for roads," she says, "bad for hiding." The younger workers laugh, but not unkindly. Several raise their palms to the earth in the quick hello people reserve for elders and gods. He follows a line of flags into a low grove where a ground-penetrating radar sled waits like a small altar on runners. The operator pulls the antenna across a transect. On the screen, a rinse of static resolves into bands and punctuation marks, reflections from buried shapes. The operator leans in. "That," he says, tracing a curved echo, "is likely a culvert. A deeper dip, darker, older, might be a ditch backfilled when the road shifted. The image is a sonar of silence." He finds himself rooting for the culvert like one roots for a swimmer to break the surface. Mystery rises with the heat. The data suggests two roads stacked here like palimpsest, a laterite causeway of the Angkorian age, and beneath it, a more sinuous embankment stitched from packed sand and clay. Did an older path wander first, only to be corrected by imperial geometry? Or does the lower band belong to a canal that was later capped to make the road, water sacrificed to speed? No inscription clarifies. The soil entertains both stories with equanimity. They open a test pit at a right angle to the main trench. Within an hour, a post hole darkens the square like a pupil. Nearby, a scatter of charred seeds emerges, rice most likely, alongside a broken sherd rim embossed with a simple wave motif. The supervising archaeologist notes the depth, location, association, voice steady, eyes bright, the liturgy of method. A rest structure, perhaps, he muses, or a field shelter that leaned on the road's protection. The sherd, still warm from the sun, feels the temperature of a palm when he holds it. He imagines laughter living in its curve once, steam, soup, instructions whispered between bites. A second historical thread winds through the day. Along major Khmer roads, small shrines and houses of fire once stood at intervals, offering shelter and ritual punctuation to the journey. Their footprints linger in patterns of post holes and ash, in thresholds placed with a careful east, in the soot-stained stones that refuse to forget flame. Hospitality was engineered as deliberately as defense. Mercy traveled in infrastructure. Fringe belief arrives with a boy carrying tea. He tells of termite mounds that line themselves along old roads at night, moving a little, then stopping, so that by dawn their road draws a ghost map no man made. They remember the line with their mouths, he says, deadly serious. Because their queen was once a priest who swore to keep the path. The crew grins. One palms the boy a sweet. He watches the mounds later, and though he sees no motion, he will not altogether swear that their small cities do not respect a geometry no human enforced. After lunch, the trowels tap again, soft, restrained, each scratch a conversation. He crouches as a worker exposes a laterite edge, then the next, then the suggestion of a seam. The stones here are narrower than sections he walked earlier, like a service lane flanking a grander artery. A debate begins under the tarp. Was this a shoulder for foot traffic while carts took the crown, or a drainage apron meant to sip the rains away from the road's spine? Or is it a repair patch from a hurried season when men were scarce and flood impatient? The older conservator shrugs. A road is always many roads, he says. What you see is sometimes a decision, sometimes a consequence. The trench deepens. Under the laterite, a stratum of compacted sand gleams pale as bone, carefully poured, tamped, and leveled. Under that, a band of clay dark as wet bread. The sequence is a textbook of intent, load-bearing, absorbent, resilient. But the clay is cut by an older groove, a shallow rut that runs not quite parallel to the laterite above. Hoof? Wheel? Water? The rut argues for a preface to the Angkorian chapter, a path trodden before stone took charge. He runs a fingertip along it and feels the faint vibration of the place thinking. Mystery widens. Some scholars have proposed that chambers beneath certain roads collected offerings, coins, beads, the first rice of harvest, to feed the path. Others scoff, citing lack of fines. Yet when a worker sieves the trench spoil, a small carnelian bead appears, orange as dawn. Its hole is worn, its body nicked by use. Its presence proves nothing. Beads travel, beads spill. And yet he cannot help imagining it pushed down by a thumb into wet sand, a wish for safe return sealed into the road's body. Cloud-shouldering jungle brings brief shade. The crew covers open squares with tarps, tools click into buckets, notes scrawl into waterproof books. He walks to the clearing's rim where the unexcavated road continues under leaf and root. The LiDAR image in memory, the soil profile at his back, a line in him until he can feel the road without seeing it, a band of intention still elastic enough to tug his feet straight. The air smells briefly of rain, the way old paper does when a book has been shut too long and is opened. Fringe belief takes one last step into the afternoon. The cook shakes salt by the trench and mutters a charm asking the road to keep its temper. Stones have moods, she says. Ask gently and they tell you. Ask rudely and they keep quiet for years. The chief smiles and lets her finish. Science survives ceremony without injury. Sometimes it is helped by it. As the light tilts, the team packs down the trenches with woven mats, a kindness against sudden downpours. He lingers, staring into the cut earth. Down there, the road is not scenery. It is anatomy, tendon, and cartilage, scar and adaptation. It remembers foot, wheel, rain, neglect. It has eaten gifts and accidents. It has been buried and sat up again. It is older than its newest stones and younger than its oldest guess. He steps back and the jungle closes rank politely around the disturbed square, promising to hold the place until morning. Behind his eyes, the pale bands, dark bands, grooves, and ruts hold their positions like a hymn he almost knows the words to. The road does not shout its survival. It lets echoes mount slowly in the soil until a patient ear can hear them. He looks once more at the grid, the flags, the neat buckets of sorted earth. Tomorrow they will move a meter east. Next season they will trench farther along the line. The lost road does not resent this attention. It has waited longer than any king for someone to listen. The forest leans in again, pressing close, as if eager to reclaim the gap where human order briefly overpowered its patient chaos. The road dips into a hollow where the light is dim even at midday, a place where sound itself seems to move more slowly. Here, water once ruled, a seasonal floodplain that tested every engineer's skill, a place where the empire's ambitions met the stubborn will of the land. Stone embankments rise faintly on either side, their lines soft with moss. He walks between them, boots scuffing a surface that alternates between rough laterite and a smoother, almost polished stone. At its center, a dark seam snakes along the ground, a drainage channel, cut with precision so that water would run beneath the road rather than across it. In the Angkorian age, this section must have been a marvel, its culverts and sluices keeping commerce and pilgrims dry even in the height of the monsoon. A historical fact stands here like a quiet sentinel. The Khmer engineers were masters of hydrology, building an intricate network of barrays, reservoirs, canals, and spillways to control the unpredictable waters of the Mekong Basin. Their roadways were not just paths, but carefully elevated arteries with hidden channels, capable of enduring centuries of seasonal flooding without being swept away. Many scholars consider this marriage of road and water control system one of the empire's greatest infrastructural achievements. Yet the villagers who skirt this place tell another story. They speak of the Serpent Bride, a Naga princess who loved a mortal king. When the king betrayed her, she cursed the road that crossed her watery domain, a curse that every 100 years the earth would rise against the stones and try to take them back. They say that if you stand here at night, you can hear her scales brushing against the culvert walls, searching for cracks to widen. The mystery that lingers is in the foundation itself. Excavations have shown layers of fill beneath the embankments, some dating centuries before the recognized Angkorian construction. This raises a question. Was there an even older road or levee here, built by a civilization that came before the Khmer? No inscription has yet named such a people, but the stones suggest a lineage deeper than written memory. Half hidden under vines, he spots a stone marker, its top chipped but its base still firmly planted in the earth. A faint carving clings to one face, perhaps a lotus, perhaps something more serpentine. His fingers trace the grooves, and for a moment the jungle breeze seems to carry a low hiss, too drawn out to be wind. Moving on, he crosses a small bridge of corbelled laterite blocks, their undersides shadowed by water thick with floating leaves. Tiny fish dart in the green shade, and somewhere unseen, a frog begins to sing. The bridge is narrow, meant for single-file passage, yet sturdy enough that ox carts once rumbled over it without fear. On the far side, a massive strangler fig has claimed the embankment, its roots curling like claws into the gaps between stones. The road bulges here, as if straining against the tree's embrace. Beyond the fig, the path widens briefly into what must have been a rest point or gathering place. Low stone platforms form a rough square, their surfaces worn smooth. In the center lies a shallow basin cut into the bedrock, now filled with rainwater and floating petals. He imagines travelers stopping here to water their animals, to drink, to pray, perhaps all three at once. A fragment of the past intrudes suddenly. A small iron fitting, rusted to a deep brown, half buried near the basin's edge. It could be the remnant of a cart's axle or part of a tool left behind by the workers who maintained the road. The artifact is mute, yet it speaks in its own way. Proof of the endless maintenance required to keep such a road alive in a climate that never stops trying to dismantle it. The embankment climbs again, and with it the road's shoulders grow steeper. The stones here are jagged, less finished, as if cut in haste. Perhaps this was a repair section after a flood, rebuilt in a season when labor was stretched thin. Or perhaps, as some suggest, this was a place where the empire's reach was faltering, and the craftsmanship no longer matched the glory of its height. He pauses at a bend where the embankment meets a cliff face. A carved recess in the rock holds the faint outline of a figure, weathered beyond recognition, but still human in posture. It could be a guardian statue, a saint, or even the Naga princess herself, eternally watching the road she both protected and cursed. The carving's gaze is fixed on the water channel below, as if keeping watch for something that might rise from it. From here, the road descends gently into another pocket of dense foliage, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and orchids. The sound of trickling water grows louder, mingled with the creak of branches swaying high above. He steps carefully, aware that each stone beneath him has survived centuries of floods, yet could still shift under the wrong weight. Somewhere ahead, hidden by the folds of the jungle, the road will meet a crossroads, a place marked on no modern map but whispered about by those who still walk these hidden ways. It is said that at this junction, travelers of the past left offerings to choose the right path, and that even today, the forest remembers their choice. He presses on, the serpent's imagined hiss still curling in the edges of his hearing, the embankments rising and falling like the breath of the land itself. The jungle sways, and somewhere unseen, The old road listens. The road rises as though gathering breath for a final word, and then thins, a ribbon pulled to thread, a thought nearly spoken. He stands where the jungle relents into long grass and watches the line run toward a horizon that refuses to answer. Here, the lost road feels like a question written into earth. Where did you mean to end? He follows it over a low swell and down into a shallow basin where wind has combed the grass into whorls. The laterite shows in freckles, a block here, a pair there, as if the road is winking to keep him brave. Birds lift in startled flocks, white against green, then settle farther on, always just beyond reach. A smell of silt rides the air, the breath of water nearby, though no water shows. He knows this perfume. It belongs to rivers and the great lake that inhaled and exhaled the year. Perhaps the road once died in laughter at a landing stage, its stone tongue touching a wooden pier where boats waited to turn distance into current and current into grain. A historical fact steadies him like a hand at the elbow. Angkor's highways stretch toward far sanctuaries and provinces, east to Preah Khan of Kampong Svai, north to Ko Ker, northwest to Phimai, their spans proven by laterite pavements, corbelled bridges, and the foundations of rest houses set at measured intervals. Stone shows the intention to bind the plain to its edges. But intention is not destination. The stone carries many beginnings. The end remains a rumor with good posture. Fringe belief braids itself through the grass. Elders say the road never ended. It dove. At a certain place by the lake, they insist, the stones continue beneath the water, straight as prayer, to a drowned pavilion where a bronze bell sleeps. On the right night, when the wind comes out of the east and the moon lowers her face to drink, you can hear that bell. It does not ring like metal. It rings like a breath taken after weeping. Those who hear it will find their way home, no matter how many roads lie between. He drops into a hollow where the earth darkens. The grass parts to reveal a rectangle of heavy timbers long since gone, remembered only by post sockets and a scatter of blackened soil. He imagines a warehouse, bags of rice stacked like tight clouds, jars of fish sauce braced in straw, beeswax packed for temples and ships. Cart ruts fossilized in the hardpan flow toward a notch in the basin's lip and away again, as if cleaving into a river once, a track of wood and water exchanging cargo with the grace of practiced partners. The jungle has sewn the seams shut with vines. The river, if it ran here, has long since turned its page, yet the slope remains shaped for unloading, the earth holding the muscle memory of traffic. Mystery walks beside him in polite shoes. Scholars argue the road's terminal point the way priests once argued the correct color of dawn. One camp sees a royal port on the lake's margin, now silt and reed, whence barges bore tribute and stone and envoys toward the river arteries and the sea beyond. Another camp insists the line favored sanctity over commerce, ending at a temple now asleep under forest, a station where pilgrims crossed from earthly measure into ritual time. A third proposes iron, that the road terminated at furnaces in low hills, where later it bled into bloomery hearths, and billets marched back to the capital like well-fed shadows. Potsherds and charcoal argue softly for each. None wins the debate long enough to be called victory. He climbs the opposite bank and the land opens like a palm. A scatter of foundations pocks the field, low laterite squares, their corners true, their centers furred with ant mounds as regular as a chessboard's pawns. A rest house, a shrine, a market shed. He kneels at one corner where a threshold stone lies sunk and runs his thumb along a groove worn by 1,000 feet. The stone remembers traffic more faithfully than names. Names prefer paper. Paper forgets in monsoon. Beyond the field, a rise carries a mound crowned with a strangler fig. Its roots fuse stone to soil to air in a single sentence without commas. He circles until he finds a carving half swallowed by bark, a lotus stem, interrupted, a line of script, only the curve of a letter left like the tail of a fish vanishing under reeds. He traces the curve with a forefinger and the tree hums under him, sap moving with the regularity of tide. The writing will not return, but its desire survives in his hand. Fringe belief leans in again, smiling gently. The old men say the road's end moves to meet the traveler of good heart. Walk with patience, and the destination will shorten the world to greet you. Hurry with greed, and it will step back 3 paces for each one you take. Lovers tested the maxim once, walking from opposite directions with flowers hidden behind their backs. They never met. Each swore the other had chosen not to come. They married elsewhere and lived well, but their grandchildren still place blossoms on these stones to see if the road will mend the old quarrel. A breeze arrives from nowhere visible and carries a ghost of incense. He follows it to a slight platform, barely a handspan higher than the surrounding earth. In the center, a shallow socket yawns, fit for a post or for a lingam. No fragments of deity lie nearby. Perhaps the statue was carried to safety or to market a lifetime ago. Perhaps the god decided to walk with the people when they left. He presses his palms together because the body remembers courtesies the mind can't justify. He takes bearings without instruments, the way caravan leaders must have done with stars and habit. East pulls toward a line of hill shadow. South smells of wet reed and the possibility of fish. West feels already occupied by the city's gravity. North carries iron in the taste of wind. 4 arguments, 1 road. He imagines a king at a fork like this, his counselors naming advantages until advantage grew thin as paper. In such moments, myths become tools. The Naga bride prefers the water route, one priest might say. The Bodhisattva blesses pilgrims who climb, another answers. The empire needs swords, the general concludes. A decision cuts the air. The road learns a new ending. A historical thread glimmers, brief but certain. Some Angkorian approach roads terminate in moated compounds whose shapes echo temple plans, even when little masonry survives. Pilgrimage and logistics cohabited, offerings on the same platform where tallymen counted baskets. The sacred and the practical share thresholds the way shade shares a tree. He descends toward a patch of ground so flat the sky seems to rest upon it. The soil here is darker, veined with old channels now tight with sedge. He kneels and palms the surface. It is compacted, fine-grained, almost polished, the gloss that many feet leave when they agree about direction. He closes his eyes and hears it, the shuffle of sandals, the swing of jars knocking shoulders, a priest clearing his throat, a fruit seller praising sweetness without lying. Then the sound thins and is gone. The gloss remains, dull in clouded light and yet reflective enough to catch a bird's wing. Mystery, patient and unsatisfied, makes its largest claim here. There are traces of a road under this road. Not stones, tension. A sheerness in the ground that predates pavement, a path taught to the land by bodies that walked it long before a king drew straight lines. Some say hunter-gatherers first etched it moving between dry-season camps and wet-season fish. Some say spirit processions wore it at night when the world was new and directions were still being named. The empire did not invent the desire to arrive, it inherited it, then improved its grammar. He stands at last where the road decides to be many things at once. To the right, a line vanishes into reed that must have been a jetty. To the left, a faint leash of stone tugs toward a low hill that surely hid a shrine. Straight ahead, the earth falls away in terraces that could cradle carts while cargo changed allegiance from wheel to water. He does not choose. He listens. The wind chooses for him, brushing the reeds so they bow toward the lake he cannot see, and the grass across the field so it ripples toward the hill, and the fig's canopy so it leans back upriver. 3 endings, all true. A port, a temple, a place where iron cooled and was taught to become intention. The road, generous, allows plurality. Endings are mouths that open into other mouths. Fringe belief leaves him with a last kindness. If you stand here at dusk with your back to the city and your face to where the water hides, the first firefly you see will show you the end you need, not the end that was. He waits. A light winks near his knee, then lifts and drifts toward the reeds. He smiles, accepts the guidance, and bows to the hill and the fig and the platform all the same. He turns back toward the line he followed, grateful for the stones that still lift from grass like careful syllables, and for the silences between them that carry the rest. The road's forgotten end is less a point than a permission. It teaches him that conclusions are junctions and that the empire, even now, prefers verbs to nouns. Dawn loosens from the trees like silk, and the road ahead lifts out of mist, not revealed so much as remembered. He steps onto the pale crown of laterite and feels the old intention flex beneath his soles, a straightness that does not bully, a firmness that does not boast. Birds stitch the first sentences of morning across the canopy. The jungle, having told its long green version of events, allows the road to finish a thought. He moves as pilgrims once moved, not quickly, not slowly, but with the cadence of someone who knows that arrival is a verb. The stones respond with their own courtesy, the faint scrape of grit, the almost audible thrum of joints resting right against right. Every so often a root crosses the surface like a note in a different hand. He steps over, and the sentence resumes. A historical truth keeps pace beside him. In our present century, scholars and conservators map these arteries with tools that see through leaves, LiDAR revealing grids and causeways, ground-penetrating radar drawing culverts from shadow, GPS tracing lines that farmers' paths already honored. The road network is no rumor. It ran from Angkor to Khmer and beyond, toward Khmer, toward the frontier sanctuaries, toward ports that taught rice to find the sea. Bridges like Speen Prapto still carry bodies across water. Rest houses still lie where mercy once had a roof. The empire's geometry endures as itinerary and inheritance. Yet fringe belief insists the road is more than stone. Old men at tea say the path can rise and walk at night, shifting its joints like a great kind animal so the living may find their dead. Bring a lamp, they advise, and a bowl of rice. If the road likes your voice, it will carry you where you meant to go before you knew you meant it. Tinor. Others swear that on certain feast days, the Naga bride braids her scales across the gravel to hide the way from cruel hearts and lay it straight for soft ones. To scoff at these tales is to miss the country the road travels through, one where fact and favor often share a cup. Mystery remains, as any good road insists it must. Does the line he follows end at a drowned jetty, at a hill-long temple asleep inside a strangler fig, at furnaces whose mouths once glowed like little suns? Do the stones cap an older trail, the ghost of a migration, the track of hunters who walked seasons into habit until habit became root? He has read the arguments and listened to the ground. Both are persuasive. The empire taught the plain to obey a ruler, the land taught the empire humility. Where one ends and the other begins is a seam the jungle wears as jewelry. A breeze arrives with the faintest fragrance of smoke, morning fires from some village peripheral to maps. He pauses at a shallow basin cut into bedrock where rain never quite dries. Water sits like a mirror that does not flatter. Petals float on its face, new enough to hold their shape, brown enough to have made their point. He thinks of the caretaker of a house of fire, somewhere along the line, snipping a wick and whispering to a flame, of a courier, fingers inked, jogging the crown at noon, of a widow who rolled her threshold stone from a ruined inn and told it to keep her family's doorway now. The road learns to live in other rooms when the palace sleeps. He tests the air for direction and finds the city not by scent or sound alone, but by the road's tiny adjustments. How the crown lifts a shade higher to shed imagined rain toward ditches that may or may not be open. How culverts nest in hollows no eye can see through leaf litter. It is like following a pulse through cloth. He trusts it and is rewarded. Through a stand of bamboo, a Naga balustrade appears in fragments, a jaw, a brow, a length of plated stone that once instructed water to behave. Beyond it, a bridge hums to itself, as soundless as a held breath, yet confident that weight still knows where to land. He crosses. The river below writes its long sentence toward the lake. A heron lifts like hesitation resolving into choice. On the far bank, a homestead occupies the shoulder where an inn once stood. The doorway wears a laterite sill worn shallow at the center. A clay lamp sleeps there, dry wick curled like a question mark. He leaves a petal, not because anyone asked, but because gratitude is a kind of literacy. The road widens, light strengthens. Somewhere, the city begins to imagine itself toward him, the distant intuition of towers above trees, the first geometry of a moat's edge, a smear of saffron that might be robes or flowers. He does not hurry. The last of the lost miles should be given their due. A curve that spared a sacred grove, a straight run laid at a king's insistence and a mason's wit, a repair patch that tells of flood and shortage, and hands that came anyway. He names none of this aloud. The stones prefer quiet. He stops once more, not at a view, but at an ordinary stretch that could be anywhere along the line. He stands until the ordinary becomes precise, the tooth of quartz in one block catching sun, the tiny crank in the crown where a tree, a century ago, shouldered the edge, and someone set a shingle of laterite to set things right, a thread of ants crossing, undeterred by empire or its absence. A road is a contract, he thinks, between intention and maintenance, between departures and returns, between wanting and deserving to arrive. He puts his palm flat on the stone and feels nothing mystical, only heat and grit and the stubbornness of human care. And now the voice slows, the script dissolving into coda as morning raises its hands and hushes the insects. He remembers the first whisper at the gate, the Naga bridge that taught crossing as ritual, the berets that made water into map, the caravan stops where commerce conversed in a dozen tongues, the veil of the Naga where shade tasted like warning, the archaeologists who coaxed a culvert from Earth's reticence, the floodplain where engineers braided road and river, the basins and platforms arguing for three possible ends. He has walked through facts and fables. Both have behaved. He stands at the threshold of Angkor's breath and lets the pace come to rest. The jungle is bright now, no longer an audience but a choir humming the chord that keeps the day in tune. He closes his eyes. Footsteps return, elephants like distant thunder, ox carts like a loom, sandals like rain on a wooden porch. Between them, the quieter traffic, a murmur of prayer, the clink of a soldier's harness, the soft argument of two traders about the price of salt. None of it is loud. All of it is sure. He speaks to no one and to everyone, the kings who commanded straightness, the monks who blessed crossings, the laborers who tamped one more layer before dark, the children who learned left from right by shadow, the widows who moved stones home, the guides who hold stories like water and pour steadily. He thanks the road for teaching him what every empire must learn, that to go far you build and to endure you share. Then he listens for an answer, and receiving none, understands he has received it already. The wind slows. Leaves settle. He opens his eyes to simple shapes, a line of stone, a band of shade, a strip of sky torn free to travel with him a little longer. The lost road is not lost. It is walking inside the roots and under the rice and through the habits of people who still measure distance by kindness and return. If you look for it only with your eyes, you will miss it. If you listen with your souls, it will tell you where to go. He turns to leave, toward towers that keep the horizon from fraying, toward water that remembers the moon's handwriting, toward a city that learned how to be many places at once. His steps are neither heavy nor light. They are the weight of someone carried by what he thought he was carrying. Behind him, the jungle pulls the curtain softly back across the stage, not to hide, but to keep. Roots adjust their grip a little, as one friend shifting on a shared bench to make room for another. And in that shared quiet, the myth steps out to walk beside history for a while. Perhaps tonight, when fireflies scribble their bright brief grammar among the reeds, the buried bell in the lake will tremble once, and the Naga bride will draw her scales back a handspan, and the house of fire's lamp will lift its flame a finger's breadth without more oil, and a termite queen will instruct her citizens to rebuild along a line straight as mercy. Or perhaps nothing like that will happen, and the road will keep its customs, bear, receive, suggest, remain. Either way, it still walks. He carries nothing away that he did not bring except a way of listening. The stones keep their secrets in their surfaces. The jungle keeps its archive in its laughter. The sky keeps its patient, moving roof. He steps off the last visible block, and the next step lands, as always, on earth.